What I'd like to do this morning is talk about a variety of things. I'd like to talk about the energy business. I'd like to talk about Envision Charlotte. I'd like to talk about the DNC. And then I want to talk about anything you want to talk about. But it was mentioned that I've been a CEO for a long time. And I look out among you and I'm thinking that you're thinking, well, if he's been a CEO for more than 20 years, he's not a very grounded guy. And I just want to share one story with you to kind of put it in perspective for you in terms of where I sit and how I think. Not too long ago, I went home and was having a conversation with my wife, M.A., and I said, could you have ever imagined in your wildest dreams that I would be a CEO for more than 2 decades and be the chairman of our industry association? She stopped for a moment. She looked at me and she said, frankly, Jim, you're not in my wildest dreams. What can I say? You know, the good news about being in this role for a long time, you work hard, and when you have a great wife like I do, she makes sure that I'm always grounded in terms of what's really important. You know, our business, I love our business. I love our business because every morning I know when I get up that by providing electricity to the homes and businesses of over 4 million people that really affect a multiple of that we're transforming the lives of people. Because electricity in the 20th century was a great enabler. No one could envision in the early 1900s that it would enable refrigeration or air conditioning, which fundamentally changed the South. Or they could have envisioned that it would enable X-rays, MRIs, laser surgery, the internet. Sorry, Al Gore invented it, but we enabled it. And computers, and the iPad, and the iPhone. And our industry stands today at a very interesting transition point, because over the next 40 years, we have to remake our system. And I'm a great believer that in remaking our system, we have a blank sheet of paper, and we need to get it right. We need to rebuild it in a way that balances our objectives of affordability, reliability, and clean. And we will do that. But this time, the focus is on getting all of that right, because affordable electricity is important. But as we remake our system, it's going to be cleaner. And we just completed, or will complete this year, 3 new plants that will make our system much cleaner with respect to our emissions. But that is part of the story. And I'm one of these people that believe that we have to build and be committed to all of the above. Nuclear, key. It produces 20% of the electricity in the United States and 70% of the carbon-free electricity. Coal plays an important role, but quite frankly, it's not very clean. We need to develop technologies to make it cleaner. Natural gas, and there's such an abundance of it today as a consequence of shale gas. And the price of gas this week dipped below $2. Who would have believed that? And 5 years ago, it was $12 an MMBTU. Huge change. Renewables will play a role. In fact, our company, within the last 4 years, have invested almost $3 billion, and by the end of this year, we'll have 1,800 megawatts of generation. And as Keith said, the 5th fuel is energy efficiency, because the most environmentally benign plant we'll build is the one we don't build. And if we can help people reduce their use of electricity, that's got to be an important part of our mission in the 21st century, and I think it will be, because I think our business model will change. Because historically, we've been all about providing universal access to every home and business in the country. In the 21st century, we're going to be providing cleaner electricity, but we're going to be optimizing the use of electricity And that's why I'm proud to work with Keith and his team, because it is so important to our future that we use energy in the most efficient way possible. And we have the capability with the new technologies that are coming to have true productivity gains in the use of electricity. And I think that's going to be one of the focuses that we have going forward. Enough about the business. Let me turn now and talk about Envision Charlotte. I'm sure Keith would agree with me that we have a very audacious goal for our city. We've taken all the buildings in downtown Charlotte, and basically we've all come together and we made a commitment that we're going to reduce the usage of electricity 20% in the next 5 years. And we're on the way to doing that. And we've had devices, kiosks in every building so people can see the use in the building, they can see the use in the downtown area, because being aware of it is really important. Speaking of awareness, how many people in this room know how much they pay per kilowatt hour every month? Raise your hand if you know. Of course, Keith would know. I see only maybe 1 or 2 hands. How many people in this room know how much they pay for gasoline? You pay more a month for electricity than you do for gas, and you don't know the price that you pay for electricity. I think the technologies are evolving where you're going to have a portal that you can look at and know how much each of your devices use of electricity and what it costs to run your dishwasher, to run your refrigerator, your iPad, or your iPhone, to charge those. So I think awareness is going to be the first step. Behavioral changes is the second step, and the third step is the deployment of technologies. And there's an incredible, just in the last month, I was in Silicon Valley, and I look at the new technologies that are being developed, because these technologies will be back-of-mind technologies. Because when you throw the switch, you don't, what do you think? You go, is that coming from a nuclear plant? Is that coming from a coal plant? The truth of the matter is, you don't think anything. And I'm happy you don't. Now, if the lights don't come on, I know what you think. You say, damn utility. I get that. And we like for those lights to come on every time you throw the switch. But the important point is that we're going to go through a transformation. Our focuses are going to be different in the 21st century. And the quality of our service is going to change, because we're going to be more focused on helping you make productivity gains in your use rather than in the sale. And so Envision Charlotte is an important step. We're the first city in the United States where a city comes together in the uptown area and focuses on reducing usage. That's going to be an important way to celebrate our city and make it unique among other cities. The other thing I want to mention is my perception. I've lived in Charlotte for 6 years now. In my life, I grew up in Kentucky. Please don't hold that against me. They do have the greatest basketball team in America. I had to say that. I mean, come on. Of course, when you go up in Kentucky, y'all know the line. I know some of you have heard me say this. There's only 3 things you can do: coal mine, moonshine, or get on down the line. I'm in the get on down the line part, but I do burn a lot of coal. But the reality is, having grown up in Kentucky, lived in D.C. and Houston and Indianapolis and Cincinnati and now Charlotte, Charlotte is a special place. Because what Charlotte has is a can-do attitude. Y'all in this room represent that entrepreneurial spirit that is so important for companies to reinvent themselves, for communities to reinvent themselves, and I really applaud y'all for everything that you really do. But this can-do attitude is so important to the future of our city. This state is a state that's reinvented itself. I mean, once we were textile and tobacco and furniture, and we moved beyond that with a research triangle. I mean, there's no reason to have two of the top banks in the country develop here in Charlotte. I mean, there's not even a river here. And so the reality is, this is a very commercial city, this is a very can-do city, and equally important, this is a city that has a great quality of life. And that combination is very valuable. And I know many of us worked to get Chiquita to move their headquarters here. It was a tricky situation for me because we provide electricity to Cincinnati also. And so we had to be kind of agnostic. But at the end of the day, they made the decision to come here in part because of the quality of life, but also because we have an airport with over 600 flights a year. So in my judgment, we have a great place to live, but one of our challenges is to continue to grow it and to create jobs that expand the middle class in our community, and we need to do that. And energy is one part of it, which really leads me to the story around the Energy Hub. We have over 250 companies in this community that do work related to energy. Whether it's in engineering, Siemens is building a new facility for the purpose of building gas turbines. So the reality, 250 people, over 26,000 people, and we're coming together as a group and looking at ways to attract businesses. I mean, I was just on the phone yesterday with a company in Silicon Valley that has a new technology. And of course, his pitch to me was, if you will deploy my technology, I will build an innovation center in Charlotte. And I'm going, well, if your price is right and your product's good, I'll be delighted to talk about the innovation center. But the bottom line is, to the extent we can attract emerging companies, because we need a mix. We don't need just old, mature companies like ours that's reinventing itself. We need companies like Keith's. We need companies that are starting up. We have private equity firms here. We have some venture capital. We need to bring all that together to really grow this energy hub. But we have to think of it not just as a hub, but a hub and a spoke. Because Clemson University has great engineering, and many of the people that we hire come from Clemson. So we need to put a spoke into Clemson. We need to put a spoke into North Carolina State, Chapel Hill, to the Research Triangle. So we need to be the center, but we need to make the spokes go into places. So we brought together startup companies, different companies, larger companies, universities, research centers, so that we're all in that mix. We'll all be stronger, we'll all be better, because it's like iron on iron. We'll make ourselves stronger and more competitive worldwide if we can do that. The other thing that's really important is that we need to think that we are competing not just against South Carolina, not against Kentucky or California or New York. We're competing against Singapore and Shanghai. We're competing against cities in Europe, in Rio de Janeiro. All the BRIC countries have cities that we're competing against. So we need to make sure that our kids are being educated. And I'm delighted that Scott's going to Chapel Hill. It's a pretty good school. It's actually a great school, but the most important thing we can do is create a job in this city so Scott comes back to Charlotte and says, this is going to be my home. Now, if I'm his parents, I'm hoping that happens also, because it's a lot more fun to have your grandchildren in the neighborhood than in my case where they're in California and in New York, and that's a long way away and not so much fun to have them so far away. But the point is, we need a quality of life. We need to expand jobs here. We're doing a pretty good job of it. We can do a better job of it going forward. Let me now turn to the DNC. I'm not going to ask how many Republicans are in this room. I saw some hands go up. Okay, let's just for fun. How many Republicans in this room? I think there's more Republicans than Democrats. But it doesn't matter, because this convention puts the spotlight on our city in a way unlike anything that's ever happened to this city. No time in the history of our state have we ever hosted a national convention. And to me, media from the United States and around the world will be here, and they'll be checking this city out. And their impressions will go out to people around the world. And my hope is they say, boy, this is a great city. These are great people. They're charming. The hospitality here is unparalleled to any place that I've ever been. Because if that's how they walk out of here, if that's the story they tell, that really helps us attract investments, others, conventions to the city. But at the end of the day, that spotlight is so critical to our city. And so I'm delighted that the Democrats selected Charlotte as a place to host their convention. It is so good for our city in so many different ways. And this is really something that is neither Republican nor Democrat. This is all about Charlotte. This is all about North Carolina. This is all about the spotlight on our city. And I think the consequence of this, if we can do this well, is that it will lead to greater recognition of who Charlotte is worldwide. And already the number of people that have come to Charlotte to check it out. Media people, we've already had a media day and they've come here and they've been impressed with the city, the feedback that I've been getting. So that's really terrific. So I want to end on this point and then open it up to questions. I really admire the entrepreneurial spirit that each of y'all have. I think it's so critical to a community. Starting businesses, growing businesses, reinventing businesses, that is just so critical to the heart of our city. And it leads to the ability to support the arts. And by the way, the arts, the multicultural campus we have downtown is really critical. It's actually a tribute to the city that we were able to build that and complete it and raise that last $83 million in the middle of the recession and get it done. It's another part of get it done, Charlotte, a can-do city. But this entrepreneurial spirit is really great. And you're probably looking at me as someone who's a lawyer by training. I've tried to overcome that. And you look at me as someone who's the CEO of a larger company, and you say, well, there can't be much entrepreneurial spirit in a regulated utility. And I just want to share with you one story, because I think the entrepreneurial spirit is a great thing. Some of y'all won't be surprised with this, but I was sitting in a bar one day. You know, my business is hard, particularly after this first quarter, when y'all didn't buy much electricity. Sitting in a bar, and I was sitting there with a young entrepreneur and a Hell's Angel. And a fly flew in the room, and it landed on my arm, and I kind of brushed it off. A few moments later, another fly flew in. It's not a great bar. And I was drinking water. Let the record reflect. Another fly flew in the room and landed on the arm of the Hell's Angel. He reached down, grabbed the fly, and ate it. I'm going, wow, I'm in a bad place. And then, a few moments later, a fly flew into the room and landed on the arm of the entrepreneur. He reached down, grabbed the fly, turned to the Hell's Angel and said, want to buy a fly?